Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Matthew Stibber. I'm CEO at Articulate Marketing. And today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is writing case studies and customer evidence. It's kind of one of the first things I ever did as a commercial writer 20-something years ago. So it's close to my heart. It's also one of the most challenging things that we do in the agency for our clients, for reasons I think will become evident as we go through this discussion. Okay, so let me share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so I'm just going to put that up there. Right, so how to run an effective customer evidence program and case studies. So let's just go through that. So what is a case study? Fundamentally, a case study is proof. It is proof that you can do what you say you can do, that you can deliver the results that your clients, potential clients are looking for. As the old joke goes, 10,000 lemmings can't be wrong, but social proof is incredibly powerful. And the evidence that you have done what you say you can do for companies like the prospect is incredibly useful. I give a small warning at this point. A lot of tech companies, a lot of clients generally think, if only we had enough case studies, if only we had good enough case studies, we wouldn't need to do any other marketing. And I don't think that's true. I think case studies have a really powerful place in the middle and bottom of the funnel, and certainly in the sales process. But they are necessary, but they are not sufficient. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about how you can build a pipeline of customers to give evidence, to provide case studies. It's not easy. And I think if you go, oh, well, we know this customer and that customer, and you've got a couple of customers, that's probably not enough. If you want to have a case study evidence, customer evidence program, you need to treat it programmatically. Oh, someone at the doorbell. So there you go. Perils and joys of recording from home. First thing I want to say, therefore, is that case studies are a team effort. It is not just something you outsource to the marketing department and then they magically find customers and magically make the case studies happen. You have to actually identify who those people are. So a couple of things that you can do. The first thing is, at Articulate, the account management team and the sales team have OKRs, objectives for reviews and case studies. It is not only that they want them, but they also have to help create and produce them. They don't just outsource it to the studio. And there's a KPI dashboard that tracks the number of reviews and case studies and award submissions, in fact, as well, that we submit. So it is measured and incentivized. Secondly, we build it into contracts. And the wording over here on the right is from our engagement letter. And it's presenting the idea that we're going to use the work that we do for you to, show what we can do, show our capabilities, and so on. Occasionally, clients will say, that's fine, but we want to review it and approve it first, and we can do that. But what we try to do is to build this in as a sort of a default thing in the contract. And you can sometimes, we don't do this, but we've seen clients do this, that say, when a negotiation happens about price, and there's a little bit of back and forth, one of the concessions you can give is, well, we'll give you this modest discount in return for your willing and active and enthusiastic participation in a case study. So it can be a quid pro quo that you can get. I like to think it's valuable in its own right. And a third suggestion, the last thing I had to suggest here is we're beginning to do Net Promoter Score surveys on customers. And what we're going to do in the next one that we do is use HubSpot's automation tool, that if somebody gives us a promoter score, we're going to send them an email saying, thanks, we really love it. Would you mind going to the HubSpot partner directory or clutch.com or something and giving us a review? We would really, really like that. Okay, so building that into automated processes, but also building it into processes like when you offboard a client at the end of a project, or when you do a kind of client post-mortem client, like a retrospective, checklist, send them a request for a case study. In my experience, because I've run customer evidence programs for Microsoft, we have one going for Dell right now. where we're doing dozens and dozens of case studies in a year, you need to start 1 or 2 months ahead of when you need the case study written, and you need to start 2 or 3 case study engagements with clients in order to secure one that gets closed and completed and done. There's a bit of an attrition rate. There's a lot of delay in the process. There are a lot of moving parts, right? In fact, we write a blog for a client. We talk to the client, we get the brief, we agree the brief, we research and write something. Maybe we do an interview. And then there's an approval thing. With case studies, you've got the internal review and the external review. You've got people's egos involved quite often in clients who are providing case studies. There is a legal review, PR review, marketing review. There's multiple steps. So it takes a long time. And frankly, doing a case study for you is a big favor. Right? Turning up for an interview, reviewing it, we try and minimize the workload for people helping us with case studies, but it still takes time, and it's pretty much bottom of their agenda in terms of their calendar. Okay, so another thing that we do to be identifying is we have a management meeting template, and one of the line items is to identify potential case studies, reviewers, and so on. So you've made your list, and at this point, you're handing it over to somebody. Could be an external agency like Articulate. It could be somebody internal in marketing who's doing it. And at this point, you are actually trying to recruit the actual people who are going to be providing the case studies. In our experience, it's very valuable if you can to have an interview with the end customer. So you kind of want to reach out to them and say, please, can we do that? Here is a boilerplate email that you could use for that. Nice and short. Do not use the word interview. Never use the word interview. There's nothing nice and warm and appealing about being interviewed, right? This is a friendly conversation. And if you can tell the interviewees that they get to review or approve a thing and they can't, that it reduces the tension. They're not feeling like they're being, interviewed by Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight, and, anything they say can be used in evidence against them. They're getting, should be a conversation, could be a friendly chat. And also, if they don't reply quickly to this email, you send a follow-up, and they don't reply quickly to that, or they don't reply at all, that gives you some insight into potential blockers, or if they say, I've got to check with my PR team, or whatever, they don't know. You can use this initial contact to gauge the likelihood of progress. It's quite nice if we're doing this as an agency, if this initial email comes from our client to their client introducing us. That way, our bona fides are established up front. Okay. You're also going to want to incentivize people to do it. Give them a reason to do it other than they owe you a favor or they're doing a favor for you. So I needed a bit of coffee here. So one of the things that we found very helpful here is to say to the client, you can use the copy if you want. Maybe we've done something very clever, or we've improved your security, or we've relaunched your brand, and you want to, you put out a press release yourself. Okay, it's a case study of how you did it. We're not necessarily writing it for you, but you can take everything we've done, reuse it, repurpose it, chop it up, and that's a byproduct of the work that we're doing. Another thing that we found, and this is very persuasive, if we've done quite a big change project for a client and they're happy with the outcome, or if as an individual they've instigated a change in a larger organization and they're looking to burnish their own reputation a bit, and that's quite important too, especially in larger companies. You implicitly, you are actually enriching and enhancing their reputation. You're going to share it out on your social media. You're going to link them in. It's going to be a thought leadership, pioneering, enhancing sort of thing. So reputation is actually a genuine commodity in this exchange. It's not just a sort of byproduct. A lot of companies, especially smaller companies, quite motivated by backlinks. If you're going to promote it on a website that's got a high domain authority like Articulate Marketing, that's actually, you'd pay, if you paid an SEO agency to try and earn a backlink from our website, you'd probably pay them $400 or $500. So, there's a cash value to the URL backlink. I'm sorry about the typo there. Modest incentives is what I meant to say. And we really like this sort of, I don't think you want to kind of bribe people. I think that's it's nice after the fact if you want to say a send thank you note or a little thank you gift, box of chocolates or something, but I don't think you want to promise that in advance. But I think this sort of environmental thing is quite appealing, and we're in the process of looking at how we do this for NPS reviews, newsletter signups and things like that. You sign up for this, we'll plant a tree on your behalf. So we want to plant a feedback forest. And you could say, if you do a case study just to say thank you, we're going to plant 100 trees or buy a goat or something like that. So then you've agreed that they're going to help, and now you're trying to book a meeting for the call. Again, a little boilerplate template here. I think it's very helpful if you can give people like a HubSpot or a Calendly calendar link, and they can just book it at a time that suits them. It saves that sort of back and forth. What about Wednesday? No, I can't do Wednesday. Are you free on Thursday? What about Thursday at 2 o'clock? All of these email templates could be embedded into actual templates inside HubSpot and embedded into sequences. So at a slightly higher volume, let's say if you were trying to do 5 of these, 6 of these a month, you could build workflows and sequences inside HubSpot with templates and just sort of really start to automate with personalization the whole process. And sequences seems like a really good way of doing that. And then comes the day of the interview, and you want to be talking to them, you want to be telling them, understanding, what happened, what was the story, what were the benefits, what was the outcome, why did they choose. And the secret here is, with an interview, you are not really trying to unpack the whole story. You should have got that internally from an account manager or somebody like that, someone working on the account. What you're trying to get is a couple of good quotes and some stats or facts if they're available. And you want to keep this interview, in my view, nice and short, 15-20 minutes. Really, they should come away from the interview feeling like they were very, very heard. It was very friendly and easy. They got to say nice things. Most of the time, people turn up for case study interviews with goodwill, with the intention of saying nice things about the company. Maybe one time in 20, they turn up using it as an opportunity to bitch and moan and grouse, but that's another story. There is a link here, and this article, How to Interview Someone Like a Journalist, I wrote this as a long article on our website, so I'm not going to get into interview technique on this webinar, but there's a lot more about it if you're interested. Okay, so we're going to talk about writing the case study later in this as a separate section. I want to just address a few common challenges, because, as I said, writing case studies is one of the hardest things that we do logistically in terms of kind of step by step. It's not the hardest writing, it's probably the easiest writing, but it's the hardest process. So first thing we get, thank you, Maddie, for sharing that. Maddie has shared a link to that article in the chat. Getting approvals can be a pain. I mean, we've had case studies going through approval cycles for months and months. So sending an email, that is one of the techniques that we sometimes use, is instead of sending this and I'm asking for your active approval, you can send the email saying, here is a copy of the case study for your records. It's going to go live next Friday on our website. Please let me know if you have any objections. So you've changed the script from you need their positive assent to I will do it unless I hear you say no. And that's a different formulation. And if you don't hear from them, then come Friday, you publish the thing, and you've covered yourself for that. And depending on the relationship you have with the interviewee, with the case study subject, that can work very well. When we did a lot of case studies, like hundreds for Microsoft, we also had to get a PR release from everybody, and we had to get them to sign it, and that was added an extra sort of step because legal had to go and approve it and all that stuff. And nobody, for some reason, people don't like signing contracts with Microsoft, although it was an extremely short and simple and friendly contract that gave them the right to withdraw their approval at any time. But the moment you go, hey, look, sign the contract with Microsoft, they go, oh, I'm signing away my life, my soul, my firstborn child. So that's probably a big ask. If you can't get the approval, there's nothing stopping you anonymizing the case study. We worked with a big multinational to do case studies. Right? You don't have to say it was Microsoft or Hewlett-Packard Enterprise or Dell or whoever it was. I think the best technique, though, is gentle chasing. Look, I'd love to get this done. One of the things that I've found doing case studies is if the subject, the interviewee, has a relationship with me as the writer interviewer, they're much more responsive in my experience to me going, look, I really need to get this case study approved by you so I can give it to my client. You know, you're interfering or delaying or holding up. Yeah, we've talked, we've met. I'm nice. I'm just Matthew. I'm the writer. You know, you're, you know, the client I'm working for is, you know, I'm getting all kinds of grief from their marketing department. I really need to get this done. That kind of, so that building that rapport and that relationship is very important as well. And generally speaking, PR, marketing, and legal review can be a real pain. Not always, but can be. Usually by adding a lot of delay. Rarely have I had sort of, occasionally you get feedback from legal, like we need to change this word, or we can't say make that claim or something, and that's kind of fair enough. Usually it just goes away for 3 months and eventually you get a sort of email with some change requests. So just keep an eye open for those people. And ideally you want to find somebody in the client, your client organization who is empowered to approve the case study and to give you the interview. And if you've pitched it right and you're talking at the right level, it's usually somebody who can kind of override the gatekeepers, ideally. Okay, another pitfall for case studies is the dreaded Franken quote. This is a quote made up by a writer and put into quotation marks as if somebody really said it. And they never ring true. They usually sound like sort of advertising copy or something. So much better to use reported speech if you can't get good quotes, or if the interview didn't yield good quotes, or get a real interview if you don't have one. Making up quotes for people's just bad writing, in my experience. Generally shorter quotes are better than long ones, and the temptation, and I've done it, so, you know, guilty. The temptation is to put these really long paragraph long quotes in there. And actually just extracting from the quote the short bit and then writing it, the rest of it as reported speech, or, you know, narrative is generally better, because people's eyes switch off when they see long quotes. They tend to skip them. Okay. Another pitfall that I've seen working for big companies, particularly, hello Microsoft, is the idea that every case study has to have some numbers in it. And sometimes you can get the numbers, right? Sometimes they have them. Sometimes the outcome is really noticeable. Sometimes people have a intuition of what the numbers are. Like, well, yeah, we don't know the exact numbers, but it's actually doubled. It seems like it's doubled our, lead generation rate. Just occasionally, as in this case study that we did for our client on-path testing, or about our client on-path testing, because we had access to their HubSpot, we could actually see the numbers and the work that we had done and the results. And so we were actually able to put some lovely zeitgeist stats into the case study. That's quite rare in my experience. Usually our clients want their case studies to have lots of numbers in, and their clients don't have any numbers to give us. And I've had feedback from, clients going, well, where's the ROI? Where are the numbers? If your client can't give them to me, I can't make them up for you. But that's a difficult conversation to have. All right, so the way that I'm talking about this as if you, lovely audience, might be doing this for yourself in your own organization. We do it sort of slightly remotely, because in a sense we're doing it on behalf of our clients, interviewing and reporting on their clients. And it's a little bit like, Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, because we have to do everything that you would have to do inside your organization, but we also have to manage our clients. So we do it all backwards and in high heels. We just make it look easy. Right. So how do you write an amazing case study? Well, I'm going to give you the basic structure and an example here, and I'm just going to talk about points at each sort of stage of this. Case studies are, unless you want to be more ambitious, and I'll talk about some other examples in a minute, they're pretty formulaic, right? Every case study looks like every other case study, and they follow this order. It's usually, problem, solution, benefits is the heart of it. Problem, solution, benefits. So let's break that down a little bit. I like to have short titles. It's very easy in a case study to try and write a paragraph title that sort of summarizes the case study. And, sometimes that's necessary and useful and helpful. Microsoft had a very strange thing in their case studies. I don't know if it's still the case, where you weren't allowed to use the name of the client the name Microsoft or the name of any product. So, you know, you helping a large retailer improve their sales process would be the title. You couldn't go, you know, Microsoft helped, or Avanade helped, you know, System Bolliger to improve something with something, which kind of is the story. But anyway, so I'm using here on the right-hand side the text of a very old case study that I wrote for Avanade like a million years ago, just because it's long redundant, and so I just thought it would be a good example. I like to put in if you have a short heading title, then having a stand first, the first paragraph of the piece that actually does tell the story is quite a useful technique, because then you can read the title, read the stand first, and you've got the gist of it. Most of our case studies somewhere have a pull quote, which means not just a quote embedded in the body text, but actually pulled out in with a sort of a line above and below, or put in a sidebar or something like that. So a nice sort of quote, and you're looking for this quote in the interview with the customer. This is the thing that you're trying to get. If you can get two good quotes, you use one in the pull quote and you use a different one in the last paragraph of the piece to go, yeah, Avanade were amazing. We did this, and this. Okay, so moving on, you then open with an introduction, and traditionally the introduction is the company biography, right? Tell us about who the customer was. You know, what do they do? Where are they? You know, just set the context. I think it's very important, if you can, to have subheadings between each of these sections, and make those subheadings pretty scannable and pretty interesting, but short. Okay. And then you want to describe the problem, the business solution, the challenge that you're going to solve, or you did solve. There's the old Rudyard Kipling, six serving men, you know, what, where, why, when, how, who. So, you know, when you're interviewing, you probably also, if you haven't got the dates in mind, you and the team and so on, just ask those questions. It's good to have a date in things. It's good to have a timeline in things. How long did it take is something someone who reads a case study is going to want to know. So subheading, another subheading, and now you get to talk about the solution. What did you do, and what, I mean, typically in our world, what technology did you use? It can be quite nice if it's bullet points. Depending on who the target audience is and what your personas are, you may want to make this more or less technical. Broadly speaking, we work on 500-600 word case studies. We occasionally write much longer technical ones, but that's probably people's endurance for reading a case study. And you know, clients would pay us, if we wrote 1,000-word case study, they're paying for an extra 400 or 500 words that most people aren't going to read. So there's also an economic calculus about how long a case study should be. Sometimes it's quite nice to get the interviewee to say something nice about the provider, or, you know, in our case, about our client. That can be a good place for a quote. Oh, it was lovely working with Articulate. They were so friendly. Then you come to benefits. So how did the solution solve the problem, and what are the sort of downstream? And if you've got stats, data, quotes, and facts, this is where you put them in. And then lastly, a sexy conclusion. So, you know, this can be a strong quote. It can be, quite often in case studies, we did all this, and now we're talking about the next thing, because that's, or, you know, we did all this, and now the client can do some other things that they hadn't expected. But usually ending with a quote is strong. So that's the very traditional case study format. And I have probably written 500 of these in Articulate, probably another couple of hundred at least. So there are other formats. We've done campaigns for clients where we've done the formal case study, but we've extracted the pull quotes and just done a little quote library. We've done a lot. I mean, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, a lot of win cards. So like slides, one slide with a few hundred words on them, so that you could, in a glance, typically win cards like that are for internal use. We do, at the moment, we're working on internal only case studies for Dell, to help Dell communicate internally about their services and how they're helping data center transformation and things. And that's incredibly useful for the sales team. We don't talk to the customers about that. We talk only internally to Dell people. So it's kind of interesting that there's a sort of a use case for case studies that is internal facing only. And this example here, this Wellington College, is probably the best example of a really deeper technical case study that we've written. So what we're doing here is actually talking about the the technology that was used and the reference kind of architecture and the solution and how it was deployed. So it's a little bit more white papery and a little bit less case study-ish. So I've put that in there and you can look at that. I'm going to share this video. I'm going to share the slides later. Okay, conscious of the time, I've got a couple more slides about how you can deploy and use case studies. So reviews is a form of customer evidence. We are very, very keen to get more reviews on HubSpot. So this is a thing that we try and drive. And that doesn't sit on your site, but you can, once the quote is public on a directory listing on Google Reviews or LinkedIn or something, you can then use that on your own site because it's been published. Logo tombstones on your website. Often that's all you need from a case study. The case study legitimates doing this. Customer quotes. This is from our site. It's, we have a little carousel with different customer quotes. This is quite sort of reassuring anti-objection copy on a website. Look, we work with real companies like you. We have internally a win library. Thank you, Maddie. Yeah, so this is our version of internal win cards. It's actually a little Notion database, and each of these entries, there's more of them, is about 100 words. They don't take very long to write, but like, what did we do? What was the client's problem? And then a little bit of classification and tagging so that the salespeople, if they're in a conversation with somebody, they can go, look, I'm looking for a mid-market company that needed a content library. Oh, okay, we've got 2 or 3 examples. We did such and such for this company, and it helps them in their conversations to talk confidently about the work we've done over the years. You can pop them up on your blog. And I think there are good, compelling arguments, as with our lovely client HTG, for putting your case studies on your blog and having a selector. One blog to manage. Blogs then get promoted out through social media, just like your case studies get promoted like blog posts. Everything just works very simply, and your about you content is mixed in with your for prospect top of funnel content, and that's a nice context for that. You may be saying 3 things of use to the reader and 1 thing about you, and that's a nice ratio. Increasingly for Articulate, we're building standalone pages so that we can get a little bit more design. We're in the happy position. This is an internal cost for us. If we do this for clients, it's more expensive than either making a PDF or making a blog post because of the extra design and coding work. But there's some value to that. But I think you need a reasonable number of case studies, and for us, it's only really been the case in the last 6-12 months that we've had enough of a library to justify having its own page and its own format, and we're still making that migration. PDFs can be useful. All our clients want PDFs. I still don't really understand why you would want to send a PDF rather than sending somebody a link to a link to a website page. But okay, PDFs. But I don't recommend gating them. I don't think it's valuable. It's valuable content for the reader that they're willing to give you their email address and phone number and date of birth and whatever other thing you want to ask to get to a case study. That's like you talking about you. That anything where you're talking about how great you are, just make that really easy to access. There is, however, a case for PDFs inside emails, in particular inside sales emails. So we have these templates inside HubSpot that we use in email sequences and in the sales process. So for example, that Jazz HR case study, or we have a Jazz HR case study where we did a lot of content work for a brilliant company in the US. If somebody says, well, can you tell us a little bit about what the work you do when you write content for somebody? One of our salespeople, like James, can just go, right, send this template, and it's got the link, it's got it's personalized, it's coming from his inbox. And that little bit where it says case study in blue here, that is actually a link internal to HubSpot, to a HubSpot document. When you click on it, it actually does ask, to access this confidential document, please enter your email address. So we then know if they've done it, which is, that's different from putting it behind a landing page on your website and hoping that people are going to fill in a form to get it, because nobody will do. In this context, they want it because it's useful information, because it helps qualify you as a potential supplier. Maddie has shared another thing here in the chat window, so thank you for that. That's brilliant. So that is everything that I had to say. As ever, very happy if you want to book up a meeting to talk about this. Very happy if you want to email me with questions. There's a lot more advice about case studies on our blog. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and thank you. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic week. I'm going to stop. Right, so I'm having a little bit of click-uppery. Stop recording. Finally, stop recording. Okay.